Most bankers aren't ready to help you until after their third cup of coffee. But with Central National Bank's after-hours service, you don't have to wait for the bank lobby to open to get help. You can contact us from 6 to 8:30 in the morning or from 5 to 10 in the evening, and we'll connect you to a real, live, local person who can answer questions and fix problems 7 days a week. Bank different. Bank Central. Central National Bank. Member FDIC.
With threats to our nation waiting around every corner, adaptability is more important than ever. When conditions change without notice, quick strategic thinking is crucial. And with obstacles consistently impending, determination is essential in overcoming them. It's this willingness, decisiveness, and resilience that sets Marines apart. With our fighting spirit, we don't just fight battles, we win them. Marines are the constant our nation counts on to fight the unknown. And through adaptable problem solving, we do just that. Learn more at marines.com.
Hey, what's up, Blazer fans? Welcome to the Blazers Edge podcast. I am Tara Bowen-Biggs, here as always with Blazers outsider Danny Meringue.
Burnt to a crisp Blazers outsider, Danny.
And how did you get that sunburn, that glorious sunburn that you have?
The tan lines from hell came from the Rip City Cornhole tournament. Shout out to everybody else that came out there, because it was packed. there was a ton of I think it's something like 75 teams or something like that, of two plus some spectators on the roof of the Moda Parking Center.
My God, there were 75 teams?
Yeah. Michael Holton was out there. Bobby Gross was out there.
Baking in the hot sun on that pavement, that many teams. I am impressed.
Yeah, it was it was a really good time. I thought I was in the shade for long periods of time. I'm kind of revisiting the day through my cell phone, and apparently I was in the sun quite a bit, which would explain the fact that I have these obnoxious tan lines on my face now. I've got both the snapback hat backwards tan line on my forehead, as well as the raccoon eyes. So yeah, I look like the Hamburglar fell asleep in the sun.
Well, you're going to have to show up early for
look.
Makeup next week when you go on Blazers Outsider. Just
That's
really
funny.
Have work on you.
You think that we actually have makeup people? No, we don't get that. Come on.
Well, you'll have to stop by Sephora on your way in and have them give you a hand. So who won the first annual Blazers Rip City Cornhole tournament?
I don't know. So we made it all the way through the semifinals, Blazers Outsiders. We were undefeated going into that round, and then we were unceremoniously thumped back-to-back games, and we lost. And everybody kind of had to blow out of there at that time, because we started at 11, and we wrapped up about 5, and they were the last 2 or 3 teams were going. One of which was Bobby Gross's team. So the old man Bobby
Gross is
Gross
just good at everything.
Yeah, apparently. Well, I mean, if you think about it, cornhole, basketball, I mean, hand-eye coordination, it's something that probably, they go hand in hand.
Yeah, and then you don't have to jump anymore, so that's good.
Yeah, exactly. The sad part is we were really hoping to match up against them, because Shane really wanted to ask Bobby Gross what it was like to get dunked on by Dr. J. That's the one thing he just keeps going back to. It's like, I really want to ask him about that.
Was that to get him out of his head in
really challenge
we were
him for
playing cornhole, or is it just
we were playing
like
basketball rules. It was a little bit of both. It was like basketball rules, like we were going for the psych out there.
Well, nothing scarier than playing your cornhole tournament and looking up and seeing the Blazers Outsiders on the other end. Of that. Of that.
The best part was Michael Holton saying "cornholio" a dozen times. So, that was easily the highlight, because one of the team names. Why was he saying that? One of the teams was named Cornholio, or the Great Cornholios. There was a lot of cornhole type names in there.
Yeah, shocking.
For the team names. No, it was the imagination was
Michael Holton
not stretched.
Like the announcer?
He was the MC, yes.
Oh, man.
And hearing him read some of the team names was stellar. Absolutely. If you tune in on Tuesday night for the show, I've got everything on my camera set up that we're going to load up into the show, and I'm going to have a Michael Holton segment, because just hearing him again say cornholio with this sly smile on his face was just priceless.
Excellent. We've given everybody a little taste of what's coming up on Tuesday with the cornhole highlights. So let's not go any farther because we want to.
It is
we don't want to
peak
give
August
it away
content
all at once. It's summertime. We're really casting about for exciting things to talk about. And where do you go to when you're trying to find anything to talk about? You go to Instagram to find out who's working out.
Take it to the gram.
So here's our Insta updates. Apparently, Anfernee Simons and CJ are both in New York working out with trainer Chris Brinkley. Have you analyzed the tapes? Do you have them time stamped? And do you have them all broken down?
No, I just casually watch those this time of year, just to see how guys look and how explosive they look. If they added something new to their game, what are they working on? Things of that nature. Because you've got in my mind, you've got the two camps. You got Drew Hanlon's camp and you got Brickley's camp. Brickley's camp in New York is more about getting out there and getting in some run. More about, I think, probably being in New York, that visibility and the guys who you're working with, some networking. Where Hanlon and a lot of the guys you see in those camps or in those training sessions, it's very, very tight fundamental stuff or things very specific that they're working on. Not that the one's better than the other. It's just you can see the difference in how each camp or training session or trainer is marketing themselves. It's kind of fun to see which guys end up where and how they end up growing throughout the summer and throughout the year. But yeah, you're going to see some more guys heading to New York here pretty soon. Talking to some folks that were up there. I think you can expect to see probably Chris Paul, James Harden out there. So for young Anfernee, if he does hang out there for the next couple of weeks, be definitely a good place for him to get his induction or indoctrination to the NBA.
Yeah, most of the videos that were highlighting other players, and every once in a while you'd see him like dashing in and out of the frame. But they did have him. They did show him in quite a lot of shooting situations. Quick off the three. He really likes to cut straight to the basket from the right side and come in. He's
definitely right hand dominant, and he likes to attack downhill to the right side. That's something I've seen from a lot of those videos and from Summer League.
So
I think
if someone comes in
work on.
that right hand dominant, do you think as a rookie, especially as a young rookie, you just let them be like that for a while until you get in the rhythm of the league, or is that something you try to take care of right away? What's your thoughts?
I think it's something you're trying to work on right away because elite level defenders, when a scouting report does come up on a young guy like this,
if you don't work on it right away, you'll get shut down immediately.
Yeah, they're gonna shade you unless you have such an ability to create space. The perfect example of this is Isaiah Thomas. He's going left. He's going left. He's going left, and yet he still gets left. You could shade him all the way to his right side, and he's still going to look to go left. I don't think Anfernee quite that dominant on the right-hand side, but he's very dominant on that side of the ball.
Well, he can really get up when he takes it. So, it's not like one where you're like, oh, God, this again. It's like, oh, dang, he's got some height. He can really attain some height. And he's not, there was a great still of him going against Cantor. And I know that Cantor's not a great defender or anything, but size-wise, the
Cantor's still 6'11", 280 pounds.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm getting pretty excited about Simons this year. I hope that we get to see him.
He's
play.
the dark horse.
Some minutes.
He's the wild card that he could have one of the. I'll put it this way: it would not surprise me if he has 2 or 3 games this year where he comes in and scores between 15 and 18 points. Just goes absolutely nuts, but then has stretches where he doesn't even touch the floor for weeks. I think he's the kind of guy that, being that he's young, being that he's clearly inexperienced, but he doesn't know what he's getting into. I think he's got a brash sense of confidence, and I think that's part of the reason why he's out in New York with those guys. Because if you look at the group that's out in New York, there's no young guys out there. Those are all the vets of vets. It's CJ, it's Melo, it's Harden, it's Cantor, it's J.R. Smith. People can say what they want to about some mentality of some of those guys, but none of these guys are young pups.
Right.
So, they're going out there and they're trying to get deep in their bag when they're working on the offseason because there's certain things in particular they're looking to hone and nail down.
And they're probably not there to make any rookies' time any easier. let's say.
No. In fact, I bet you they look at him and they want to take him down every single time. When a new guy gets on the court, you got to go at him. And I think that's a really, really good place for Simons to get his first experience.
I am just absolutely convinced that because of his appearance, looking even younger than he really looks like, I think he's going to have a surprisingly good year, and he's going to be stronger than we think he is. And a whole bunch of it is just because of his baby face and his chubby cheeks, and he just looks so young. But I mean, he's really not appreciably that much younger than a lot of the guys that went in the top half of the draft.
I mean, he's a year younger than Zach.
Right.
I mean, it's one of those things
5 months younger than Gary Trent Jr., I think. So
yeah.
he's not
the
bad.
difference
Anyway.
is Gary Trent Jr. is the son of Gary Trent, so genetics played a role.
Right. So CJ's there as well, dribbling and really showing off his handles.
Something we should talk about here, and it kind of goes back to something we talked about with CJ last week. CJ is working on, and has said he's working on it. For anybody who's watching those videos who thinks like he's trying to handle the ball too much or he's not creating for others, there's a particular thing that CJ's working on. Getting to the free throw line, generating contact in certain places, getting people off balance and attacking at a certain place on the floor to understand where to generate those free throws. That's something in specific that he's working on. So if you're watching the videos and you see CJ and it looks like he's just pounding the ball, watch, especially when he's trying to attack the rim, what he's trying to do with his body and what he's trying to do with the defender's body, like how he's trying to draw them in and finish through contact. Those are things that he's trying to work on.
That is a great point. But now that I think about the conversation we had last week about CJ not expecting, not pinning all of the, the Blazers' improvement hopes on CJ because, if he can improve by a point, that's, he just doesn't have that much room to grow. However, I would ask you, if he gets significantly better in getting to the line, doesn't that translate into more than just like maybe a point? I mean, if he gets to the line 2 or 3 more times a night, that's
then
potentially...
he's getting to the line 2 or 3 more times, or 2 or 3 times. It's not... CJ's not a guy who gets to the line all that much to begin with. I mean, he's doing it 2 or 3 times now. That's going to take away from his field goal attempts, though.
Improvements there, 2 trips to the foul line is potentially, 4 free throws.
Yeah, no, I totally get what you're saying.
4 points. That still adds up.
But
so that seems to me the one area that could actually bring a significant, points difference.
This is true, but the one thing I will take away here is that with those increased free throw attempts, either his usage rate is going to have to go up to maintain the field goal attempts, or the field goal attempts are going to come down. So that's kind of the mix in between where it becomes more about efficiency than it is and effectiveness of generating free throws versus taking long 2s or another 3. What's the inherent value in that? And CJ getting to the line, I think, is a very, very good thing for Portland. But I don't think inherently it's going to change a lot as far as his overall production. The efficiency of his production and the value of his production, it'll go up, I think, but not in a significant manner.
I think sense? But I think that is the one area where he could potentially have enough growth that it actually contributed to more wins for the team.
I don't disagree, particularly if you're talking about...
That's very generous of you. I'll take that.
CJ. No, I'd say, but in particular, CJ's his clutch numbers last year were not good. And a lot of that had to do with his ineffectiveness shooting, but also at the free throw line. Think about a couple of the games last year where CJ struggled at the free throw line. Him knocking down a few more free throws over the course of the season. Oh, it's only 15 more free throws. But remember, folks, we've talked about this a billion times. The average, margin of victory is 5 in the NBA. So if you get a couple more here or there, that could shift things in your favor big time. Portland was 14-13 in the 27 games last year that were within 5 points. I mean, that's the difference between making or missing the playoffs.
Yeah, I see. I would like someone to take a look at CJ in the clutch. Has that been done recently? If not, I would like to put in a request for somebody to actually look at CJ in these clutch situations, because I think there's a narrative that he sometimes hasn't been able to make his free throws or hasn't, I know there were definitely a couple of times last year where he missed important shots that would have won him the game, but I wonder how many times he did make the shot and we aren't really talking about that. So I'm going to put a pin in that for a future discussion.
By
about
somebody, you mean
what does it really say? What did the numbers anyway really reveal? What are you giggling about?
No. Yeah, I said by somebody, you mean me. So I'm just making a little note here real quick.
Oh.
To kick those numbers out for you later, and then we'll
You're
talk
welcome.
about it on the show.
Thank you, Google Dan. Okay, one other, Dan is my personal Google. When I need to look up something, I'll just send it to Dan and he'll Google it for me. It's great. So anyway, one other Portland Trailblazer we have an Insta update for. That is Seth Curry. Seth Curry has been playing 5-on-5 today. He posted on Instagram that it was the first time he played 5-on-5 in 10 months. Which
10
that's
months.
pretty surprising.
Yeah, so
I didn't know it had been that long.
Yeah, for anybody who didn't know why some of the folks around Blazers Edge have kind of compared Seth Curry's signing to Festus Ezeli, this is why, folks. It's not the same kind of injury. You're not talking about knees and a big man, but you're talking about a young man in Seth Curry that he had a devastating broken bone that led to him basically not playing competitive 5-on-5 basketball for almost a year. You don't know how he's going to react. You don't know how he's going to be until he gets back out there in those situations where the full force of, cutting, jumping, landing, all of those things are now on his leg again. So that's a big step for him.
I didn't bring this up beforehand, so if you don't have this handy, sorry, but what was his injury compared to Paul George's?
Seth's was not. I don't believe Seth's was a compound fracture. Paul George's was, and that presents its own. Issues.
Because I'd say he's bounced back pretty well, and he wasn't. He didn't play basketball for a year.
Yeah, no, I believe Seth's was I want to say it was a non-displaced fracture. I'm actually taking Seth Curry
because I think it's if we can discuss, if you can find it handy, just because I know I'm not the only person who's there's been other players who came back from a broken leg. It's not.
Yeah, no, it's not nearly as bad as something like microfracture surgery or something like that,
or
it's
mystery thigh injury.
Yeah, exactly. It's nothing like that. For me, it's the fact that he still hasn't played basketball for nearly a year, or competitive 5-on-5 basketball. So there's some trust with building that back up, and that's why I think a lot of people are, fairly or not, are looking at this signing like, hey, it's a Hail Mary signing, like the way the Festus Ezeli signing was. Like, you're looking at a spot of potential weakness, and you're taking a chance on a guy who you're getting a significant bargain for, and in the long run or the short run, it's not really going to matter all that much, because if he plays really well, Portland's not going to be able to afford him unless he really wants to stay here and take a discount. And if he doesn't play well, Portland's only got him for a year, so the amount of risk here is very minimal.
Yeah, so not a terrible downside, but some good potential in the upside.
Yeah.
So one thing I have to say about because not really knowing anything about Seth Curry, except for that he's Steph's brother, I'm anxious to get to know him, because there's Blazers have had the brother of some might say a bigger time player quite often. So this is another one in the we had Harvey, the Bulls had Horace. At one time it looked like Brooke was the better Lopez. I'm not sure how that is working out, but so now we have Seth, and it'll be interesting to see how he's able to make his mark. But I have to say that even just his outfits that he works out in, he really sets himself apart from his brother. He has kind of a Boogie Cousins look to him in his workouts, because he wears the full, I don't know, something about his picture. I was like, he's got a little boogie going on. Maybe it's his facial hair or something. He just kind of has a little bit of a bad boy edge looking to him compared.
Well, Steph
to
wears
his brother.
that whack Under Armour gear too. Like his shoes are terrible, and that alone, when you see Stephanie's workout videos or
he's just never going to inspire fear.
No, you're just like, oh, that's cool. You've got the old man airs. Nice. That's a nice touch on those. So yeah, but no, I like, again, and this isn't like a shot at Seth. I'm not expecting a lot from him. So I think in the end, anything that the Blazers do get out of him, and I hope he does well, is a bonus. That's how I'm going into this season looking at him.
Well, it looks, I mean, I haven't heard anything about like the status of him to play, but as my understanding is that he was going to be available. I don't know if he was going to be available during training camp. Have you heard any word about that? If he's going to be ready by then?
I believe they said that they were unsure at the time, but they were hopeful. Mm-hmm. I believe what was the parlance that they used. And I haven't heard anything otherwise that has prohibited his growth. Neil O'Shea said a couple weeks ago that I think he was on track to be ready for the season opener. I believe is the way they went with that. So I'm happy with that. And if he's playing 5-on-5 and he gets out there the next day or two and there's no reports of any, discomfort or issues, great.
Or having to, go back out and ask for an MRI after playing one inning.
Yeah.
Man, baseball had some bad news from one of their stars today. But anyway, not to derail the conversation, although it is August.
It's August. Derailments are allowed.
CJ made waves again on social media.
Good old CJ.
Bless his heart, he is keeping us at least afloat in terms of things to talk about.
He is the content that keeps giving.
Would you like to explain I'm sorry, or I'm trying Jennifer? Because I'm so excited for the hashtag I'm trying Jennifer new inspirational.
The new Rip City on the ass?
Yeah, because I think it's fun. I think this is a fun story, actually. And
yeah,
some
I
of
do
them
too.
can be really annoying, and I think this one is actually fun. So why don't you summarize what's going on?
So what's weird about this whole situation is that CJ's a very bright, intelligent, media savvy guy, and it strikes me as weird that the route that CJ has decided and his team have decided to take is to be the guy that has this take about the Warriors, that super teams are weak. If you join the super teams, you're weak-minded. Yeah, right? I mean, this is not, CJ is not J.R. Smith. He's not just, or Nick Young, just out there saying something stupid for the hell of it. Like when CJ says something, it's usually well thought out, nuanced. It's not just thrown out there. So yeah. I believe when CJ says this stuff that, oh, hey, my dog decided to join the podcast. Hey, buddy.
Oh,
okay,
awesome.
If you could lay down, thanks. Sorry about that, folks. But
happy to have your dog join us.
All right, come here, buddy. There you go. Go ahead, lay down on the couch.
We all see the softer side of Dan.
Yeah, he just wants attention right now. Say hi, Nova. There you go. Good boy. But as far as CJ goes, I think he's really into this. I think he's trying to embrace this whole villain role. So
and
let's
you know
rewind
what?
it.
I can get behind that because sometimes a guy might test the waters with that a little bit, but then they kind of back up and then it's just all backpedaling.
Exactly.
So.
Yeah, and he's not backpedaling, and he doubled down hard. I mean, so he goes on Chinese TV, CCTV, state media, whatever it is, and the hostess asks him about, thoughts on the Warriors, and the word CJ used, and this is, again, I think CJ is very poignant and purposeful in his choice of words, and he called what the Warriors have going and people who go to this team, i.e. Boogie and Durant, disgusting.
So you are the master of hyperbole. What did you think of this when CJ said that?
I was like, sitting there. I'm on Twitter leaning over my laptop, and I went, ooh, okay, this is going to be good. I mean, slap the lawn chair down behind me and buckle up, baby. It's going to be fun.
Tell us how you really feel, CJ. I mean, for him to use that about his colleagues, it really shocked me. Even,
I was all about it. It was great. Like, he didn't hold back. And the host is like, oh, I heard that. You heard what you said. And like CJ was trying to hide it. He's like, I think it's disgusting. And enunciated it all the way through. And I was like
that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we get that. And then I believe it was the score aggregated that clip. CJ responds to that and says, "Why are you bringing up old stuff?" Which is kind of contrary to the whole embracing the villain thing. Like, that one was kind of weird.
Yeah.
Like, he kind of took a half step back.
Your hypothesis is a little shaky on that ground.
Yeah, and I was like, you walk that one back. And then you get CJ's response to that, and God bless her, Chalk to Light 1980, Jennifer comes in with, "Win a playoff game first." And CJ's response, "I'm trying, Jennifer." Just immediate gold. Just
It
manna
took
from heaven.
Off.
So I had watched the CCTV clip, like probably within a few minutes of it like coming out. And it took a little while for CJ's response, but it was pretty quick. But I didn't see the "I'm trying, Jennifer" until a little storm had started. Like it hadn't been it wasn't the wildfire on Twitter yet, but I hadn't checked Twitter again in like 20 minutes. And I checked my phone and I've got like 6 or 7 DMs. "Hey, you need to make this a t-shirt." And I'm like, "What do you mean I need to make this a t-shirt?" And I look at it, I'm like, oh my God. First of all, why are you all coming to me to have t-shirts made? I'm not Captain Fashion. Stop doing that. Second of all, Grant Goldberg and I came up with a really cool design. So I'm stoked about that. So thank you for this whole thing, CJ. But it took off like wildfire, right?
Right, it did. And it was, and the thing was, is it like, it continues to be just kind of a nice, funny story. You know, like,
oh, it's fantastic. Like, there's no milkshake duck.
Hurt. No one's so at this point like mad at Jennifer because Jennifer just said what we were all thinking. You know.
And I think CJ said what everybody who's not the Warriors is feeling. Like, you could hear the pain in CJ's voice. Like, man, I'm trying. I'm trying, Jennifer.
It's
not like I'm not trying.
Yeah.
I can't wait until opening night when the "I'm trying, Jennifer" chant starts.
Yeah.
Like, the Portland fans have done a really good job of, like, getting the claps synchronized just right for some pretty strange and awkward chants. I really want to see how they get "I'm trying, Jennifer" to work.
Oh, that's easy. "I'm trying, Jennifer. I'm trying, Jennifer." It's easy.
Yeah, see, it doesn't quite roll off quite right. So that's what I'm wondering.
It'll be fine. Once you hear it, once you hear 19,000 people chanting it, you'll get it.
Okay.
You'll get behind it.
But yeah,
you know,
I mean,
just
it's
in terms of like marketing
everything.
slogans that they've come up with in the last, 10 years, when it was like "Rise up" and "Rise with us" and "Please, dear God, don't leave us," whatever all their slogans were. I think
"We're trying,
really
Rip City" is going to be something that like, you will see that this year. Do not be surprised if the Blazers marketing has, or the Amara using the social accounts. It's going to get utilized.
Yeah,
I mean,
and I think
the one thing I would caution here is that, like everything else in the social media era, it's going to get beat to death. Travis Demers said it perfectly. Be judicious with your use of "I'm trying, Jennifer." Do not use every single example of "I'm trying, Jennifer" literally. Just for the sake of all the Jennifers out there, just let them be. Like, let it marinate. You just pick and choose your moments of when you use "I'm trying, Jennifer." Not you specifically, Tara. The collective you.
Yeah. Well, from your mouth to God's ears, we can all follow those instructions. By the way, that's my slogan for the year: from your mouth to God's ears. Because somebody will say something like nice and positive, and I'll just be like, "Yes, please, God, make that happen."
I guess that's a little bit of a graduation from that's what happens when a python swallows a porcupine.
Yeah, well, I can use that too. Good work, Dan.
You only get one. You can only have one slogan.
No. If I want to, I can have two. Last week you told me I could only pick one number, and I picked two because that's what I wanted to do. So
cheating, left, right, and center.
So speaking of cheating and not cheating, we're actually speaking of not cheating. I'm going to go to our main topic, which seemed like a good off-season topic to try to untangle. And that is that there are going to be some new things happening in terms of sports betting, whether or not they happen right away, or if they happen they'll definitely be happening over the course of the next couple of years. The Supreme Court recently made a ruling that has changed the world of sports betting. And I wanted to just kind of talk about what that might mean for the NBA, for people who are fans of the NBA, and just kind of scratch the surface, really, of what's going on in the sports betting world. Is that even what you call it? The sports betting world, sports gambling? What do you even call it?
You can call it whatever you want to call it. Your sports book, your gambling, betting.
Well, I'm sure you're not shocked to find out that I am not a big gambler.
No.
And I know, shocking, isn't it? So I would like to just kind of start off by laying the foundation of having you explain, what are we talking about when we're talking about people betting on basketball?
So just gambling in general, you have certain things that you can bet on. In sports, you've got your money lines, you've got your over-unders, you've got your winners.
So wait, a money line, I know what an over-under is, right? And I know like who won the game. What do you mean by money line?
So typically when somebody's referring to the money line, they're talking about the point spread.
Okay.
So when you see like, I believe the average NBA team at home, it's either a 3 or a 5 point spread. I can't remember what the average line is now. I have to take a look as it adjusts. But if you're an average 500 NBA team at home, you are going to be favored by 3 points. If you're playing against another average team, that's what home court is worth. So if you have a team that at home is favored by 7, that means they have to win by at least 7 points. And then you factor in if they're at home that they're worth 3 points. So you're assuming that they're a 4-point winner.
A 4-point winner, and then you add the 3 for the
exactly. That's how they come up with these lines. So everything has much like analytics. Everything has its own value within a team, home, road, back to back, and this is something people probably heard me allude to in the past. Officiating, there's a reason why the NBA announces day of games what officials are working what games, because if that information is presented ahead of time, that can significantly impact gambling. Now, that may change going forward now, though. So this will be the first year where it's legal around the country.
So if I wanted to get started, before the rule changes, what are my options as somebody here in Oregon? I feel like I know about basketball. I want to bet on basketball. What are my options for betting on a team or betting on basketball right now?
Well, the legal option is to go to Las Vegas, Nevada, and place your bets at a sports book.
Do you have to physically go there?
Yes, you need to go to the sports book to place your bet.
So is sportsbook just a fancy word for place where you go to place a bet?
A sports book is a place to go, or place that you go to place a gambling wager that will also be responsible for paying out your winnings.
Okay.
That's the official sports book parlance there. And with the Supreme Court ruling, why this is so huge is because it opens it up to every state in the country. Now, there are methods that technically aren't legal where you could gamble off-site or offshore, which is why you see companies like Bovda who are not or are in nations that are not beholden to U.S. law. And that's where people, and that's why you end up seeing those lines usually quoted are coming from those sports books. But that's why it's such a big rush right now, and that's why it's so big of a deal. In my employer at NBC, they're working on something. ESPN has announced they're working on something. In fact, ESPN I think has one rolling out already on their ESPN Plus for
how is all of this different from playing fantasy sports? Isn't that a type of gambling?
Absolutely.
And so why is fantasy so easy to participate in?
Well,
legal?
it was until it wasn't. Remember, we had that big fight over the last couple of years, and you saw the places like FanDuel and everybody else kind of fold up there for a while. Remember, you couldn't go 5 minutes without seeing one of those stupid ads on TV. And then everybody kind of held up because were they purview to gaming regulations? And with that, a lot of people froze up and they weren't sure which way things were going to go. With that in mind, it was messy. So now that these rulings have come down, you're starting to see those commercials up again. You're starting to see more visibility in that area. And the difference between laying money on fantasy versus laying money on like in a casino or a sports book, it purely for me is about the way it's packaged and marketed. Like playing fantasy, like daily fantasy, where there's actually money on the line, it's no different than gambling. You're paying a set amount. You're putting in more variables into the equation with fantasy than you are in the variables that you have in play between two teams.
Whether or not somebody wins a game.
Yeah,
and by how much?
Exactly. So I mean, I think it to be, in my mind, it's harder to be a very, very good fantasy player than it is to be a very good just picking winners and losers. So it's a different way to go.
So how did the fantasy thing become so widespread? Is it just because nobody quite knew what laws they were supposed to apply to it, so they just kept doing it, and then they pulled it back a little bit once they realized, like, oh, we actually might be under regulation?
Yeah, basically that's what it comes to.
Somebody invented an app, made it super easy. People money just started coming in, and
much like everything else in venture capital, you don't really know what you have until you have it, and then what comes from all of that is unchecked at first, and then they roll it back and go, okay, this is cool and all, but we need to better understand this before we allow. Because everybody's got to get their fingers in the pie is basically what it comes down to.
Yeah. So do we have any
including
idea
the
what
NBA.
that's right? Well, and do we have any idea yet what that is going to look like?
The NBA wants 1%.
Right.
That's
the bets.
Yes.
Which will be considered a part of the basketball related income.
Yes.
Right?
And
then it goes
for everybody who's wondering, like, oh, that doesn't sound like that much money. It's a substantial amount of money, and it will significantly impact, especially in the coming years, significantly impact the salary cap level. There will be a ton of changes that are coming with that will change how we view the salary cap and how it's structured.
So what are the more problematic things that you've heard of about, like, I mean, just how are they going to figure this out? I mean, I know that, like, in terms of, like, a lot of states already had laws, in the pipeline to be passed quickly once the Supreme Court decision was made. So the legal aspects are mostly already in the works. But what are the logistics people are going to have to figure out? And, like, I've heard, sweeping massive, it's going to have such a huge impact, not just because of the money, but because of all these, like, trickle down effects that we don't even, like, all these unintended consequences we don't even know are going to happen now. What's it going to mean to the players when that much more money is being bet on the outcome of their games? And also I've heard, of some, like, micro betting things, like, betting within, to talk a little bit about what that is.
So let's start at the top first. Unless things change nationally for gambling to work, to actually to place these bets as they are, there has to be an actual brick and mortar location. So that's why I think you're seeing a company like Buffalo Wild Wings, who already has brick and mortar locations everywhere, making this visible push to be a part of gambling. That it could be that, or it could be the greatest marketing ploy since IHOP changed to IHOB. It could be as simple as that. But people are talking about it because if you think about it, they have all the necessary things in place. They have the brick and mortar locations. They have they already have the government contacts because they have to get their liquor licenses. So that they already have the oversight necessary within their company to go through these government type of contracts or government regulations on top of everything else that the food and restaurant industry requires. And then this is so corny, but something I was talking to a few people about the other night. When you go to Buffalo Wild Wings, at every single table you have those stupid tablets. Where you play
I've never been to Buffalo Wild Wings, so I don't know.
Okay, so they've got these little tablets on the table that you play trivia games with. Well, now you're playing gambling games with them. Like, I mean, that's how simple the transition is going to be, if it's something that they want to do.
Have they talked about what the licensing might look like?
Not here in Oregon. I don't know how that's going to look state by state by state. Some states may make it simple. Some states may make it harder. I think a good explanation or a good comparison to this is the legalization of marijuana around the country. Even though it's legal in various states, to what levels is it legal, and how easy is it to be somebody who can grow it versus distribute it? So I think those are the same kind of comparisons you could use, because it's going to start in a few states. I think it's going to be, by the end of the year, I think that the estimations are going to be about 15 to 17 states would have a framework in place. What that framework entails, I couldn't tell you right now because it's just so much up in the air. But how that trickles down, it's like something like you're talking about with microtransactions. Will every state allow those microtransactions? And for those who wonder what these microtransactions are, think of like being at a game and you have your cell phone and it's the end of the first quarter and you want to bet on the over-under of both teams' combined points being over 75 or 80 or whatever, being over 100. So 51 for one team, 50 for another, is a simple math at halftime. That's your microtransaction. That's your live betting microtransaction right
Wait,
then
do
and
you
there.
come in with that, or does somebody flash you and say, hey, here's what we think is going to happen. Do you want to bet on this?
Oh, it would be right there, and you're like, gamble.net, whatever the hell, whatever the hell it is. You get your push notification on your phone. Here's your updated bet lines. Or if you're let's say they integrate it with the teams. The Trailblazers' own app will have a gambling section. You push that button, and you have your live lines throughout the game. Now you're not only watching the game, you're watching something you've gambled on, and you're spending more money within the infrastructure of the NBA. Like, this is win-win-win for the league.
Money-wise.
It
is.
Yes.
But let's talk about
there are a lot of
other
intrinsic complications that come with that, but I mean that's a whole other podcast.
Well, I want to bring it up as as something that there's going. I think I mentioned it briefly before. There's going to be consequences.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
We don't know about, and we don't know who's going to be most effective. So we don't know what the consequences are. We don't know what the results of those consequences are going to be. We don't know who's going to be affected by it. And is there anybody who's paying attention to that, or is everybody just out there making apps to make this possible, and we'll deal with that later?
Oh, I think it's the Wild West, like everything else. It's the Wild West.
How come we haven't learned that that's not a good model?
No, that's just how it goes. I mean, you take something and you push it as far as you can, and it goes too far, and they reel it in. I mean, that's not even just the U.S. That's just human nature. Like, you just go through historically, and that's just how it's been. It's not like this is going to go off without a hitch, and nobody's going to get addicted to gambling, or the impact it's going to have on a region isn't going to be all positive. I mean, there are a lot of things to consider with this whole idea, but it's one of those things that's going to happen. The NBA is very much leading the charge. The other sports leagues will follow suit. And with that in mind, you're talking about billions of dollars at play. And so everybody is going to push as hard as they can to be there first with the best options. So you've got all the tech bros up and down the West Coast trying to come up and get a hold of every single app and link and being a part of this, that, or the other 24/7 right now. I've talked to some guys.
I would admit that to tech companies.
Yeah.
But so you said that the NBA is kind of on the forefront of this.
Absolutely.
So are you saying that, is it because they have Adam Silver leading this charge? Like,
Yes.
where are the other? Okay.
It's very much so Adam Silver. Adam Silver, even before he took over as the commissioner of the NBA, this was something that was kind of there. So it's this is not something new for him. So it's definitely nice to see that he's, if you're talking about who's going to lead the way, I think he's the best option of all the commissioners, hands down. And that doesn't go with any like particular views of any other commissioners. I just think he's the most ingrained and well-informed at this point in time, and willing to take the risks necessary to push it forward.
And have there been any some statements, or like what's the NBPA, the Players Association? What's their involvement in this?
I have heard crickets from Michelle Robertson and her group. I would assume at this point in time that they are all for it, because that's BRI.
Right, it's
basketball
more money.
related income. It's more money in their pockets. And it's not taking anything away from them. Players are already not allowed to gamble as part of the collective bargaining agreement. I don't, and for anybody, here's something that I hear: the integrity of the game. Folks, gambling's already going on pretty significantly. If you want to talk about Tim Donaghy and those situations, yeah, I get it.
I mean, this is going to be so much more money.
Yeah, and guess what happens with that much more money? A lot more scrutiny. When you have this much more money being put in, this many more eyes trying to play or wanting to play, there's going to be a lot more enforcement. That's just the nature of the beast, because everybody's going to be trying, or anybody who's doing it is going to be trying to take advantage of it. Well, this is Las Vegas, and this is the gambling industry. What's the most common saying in the gambling industry? The house always wins.
No idea. Why would you think I would know that?
The house always wins.
Okay.
And there's a reason why. Because they spend hundreds of millions of dollars to be at the forefront of technology and security and algorithms to understand what they can do to put the odds in their favor. And so
I just worry that it's going to be the loudest voices that get everything that they want, and it would be moving so fast.
How so?
That I don't. Well, just like whoever had this idea in the first place, they're going to get what they want because they're the loudest and they were the first. Whether or not their idea or their way of making it happen is the best way, it's just going to be the first way, and it's going to be the people who are there, whose names we all know, who are the loudest, that are going to get their way. And it's just. They're not going to have time to carefully develop this.
Oh, no,
it's going to happen.
It will be careful,
and
but
who's
not
ever loud and best placed right now is going to benefit from it.
Yeah, it's not going to be perfect. It's not even close. But I think they're going to try to do as best they can with that initial rollout. And again, it won't be without casualties. I don't really know if I like the use of that word, but it won't be without its problems. Yeah. But I hope there's very little, but so I just don't expect there to be that smooth of a rollout.
Yeah. How soon do you think that, I can go down to a Buffalo Wild Wings and make a bet and have any idea if I know what I'm doing?
Here in Oregon, I would assume in the next 18 months. Mm-hmm. That's kind of where I'm sitting with this right now. I would think that the NBA is trying to be at the forefront of controlling this as much as possible, and they've already made. I believe it's the MGM. Mm-hmm. Is the official
their sponsor, their partner? Yeah. What does that mean?
Anything that's going out gambling wise is backed by the NBA. It's going to have the MGM stamp on it. That's how I read it right now. So like if they make an app, if they, what do you mean by anything that goes out gambling wise? What could that mean? that it could mean anything. It could be a daily email newsletter that comes out with the morning lines. It's going to have the MGM stamp on it. Now, if it, contractually, I don't know if this is going to happen or not. But if they go into a league-wide app that features the ability to gamble in states that allow it, I'm not entirely sure what the legal ramifications are for cross-line gambling. Like, what does the app allow you to do, depending on your state? Because it's going to be location enabled. That's how all this stuff works. So there's a like I said, there's a ton of nuance that goes into this stuff, and it's just now getting started. Like, this snowball is just starting to roll down the hill, and it's gonna do some dents on the way down. But personally, like, I'm the old tale of the degenerate gambler. I'm not that guy, but I do enjoy placing a wager from time to time. Like, I think ultimately, if you want to do it even in today's world, without the ruling from the Supreme Court, it wasn't difficult. But if you put this stuff out in the open, the more money and the more eyes you put on it out in the open, the whole idea of the sanctity of the game, I think, becomes easier to predict and protect.
It'll be very interesting to see what happens. It'll be really interesting to see, how does media, what, like, if you learn something in a pregame scrum, what do you?
Are you responsible?
Are
to
you
report
going to change the game if? Are you going to change things if? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
say
those
what you were going to say.
Yeah, no, those things are incredibly important because it becomes the NBA has to set these standards for what teams are required to give out information wise, whether a player is injured or something along those lines. If you withhold that information, and somebody else within has that information, then you're in a position where you're taking advantage of the system. Now, I know that the Trailblazers, I believe from what Casey said, that the employees are required to sign off on no gambling if you're a Trailblazers employee or under contract with them, which I assume is probably a league-wide deal. But who's to say that stops somebody from feeding information that's insider knowledge to somebody else? Like, those are the kind of things that you do have to worry about, and how teams protect data, because everybody's always trying to get an edge, both teams and gamblers. So as that progresses, what side of the line does the average fan fall on? How much information are they or should they be privy to? And I think that's something the NBA is going to have to take a look at.
How do you think this is going to enhance your viewing pleasure for the NBA? Well, for you, personally?
For me personally, it will. For me personally,
it will.
I do enjoy the gambling aspect of it from time to time. And on top of that, I think it's going to give a broader knowledge base and a deeper knowledge base to the average fan. Because if you've got money on the line, don't you want to know more and more and more about a particular thing? Mm-hmm. And if that is the case, even if it's only $1 or $2, I think the common desire there is that, okay, I want to know more about this. So how can I learn more about this? And the NBA is going to want to give that data away. On the other side of that, how valuable does the stuff that like Second Spectrum does, like how valuable is that going forward? So, and how much do these teams value and protect that data? So I think it's going to be overall good for the league, for the teams, and for the fan.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what all comes of it. So thank you for indulging me, for walking me through some of the basics. I will have more questions later as things
when it becomes legal here. I will take you down to place your bet.
Woohoo!
We will go do it. We'll record it live.
I'm trying to decide if I should use this to a segue and just make a big wah, wah, wah. Shall I bet on Blazer 5 gaming next year?
Yeah, that sucks. Number one seed.
I hate this game, Dan.
Goes
this
out.
has
Goes
turned
out
me into just a bitter and sad person. This esports business
in a terrible fashion too. For anybody who plays the game or knows the game, One Wild Walnut got a pass down the middle and got put in animation in the game. That's part of what dictates what a player does once you put the inputs in on the sticks and the controllers. And he got what is a bug in the game, and in a tie game, 73 apiece. And from really there on, Portland kind of lost it. And this was after, obviously, One Wild Walnut, Dwayne Downey, won the MVP and Defensive Player of the Year. They were the number one seed going in.
Number one seed
upset
lost to the number 8
by the lowest seeded team, the Knicks. So, yeah.
I don't know if I can handle this. I don't know if I can handle this if this is what's going to happen. Like, they were so excellent all season. They were just so good. They were just blowing the doors off of everybody, and they were just clicking on all cylinders. And then they lost. First round loss. I don't need another team in my life that's going to experience.
It's going to give you first round losses.
Dan. I don't. I really don't.
No, you're not in favor of those, huh?
No. Like, I just, for some reason with the Blazers, it's okay. But for some reason with Blazer 5 Gaming, I just had these high expectations that were crushed.
I told you not to let them get too high.
Yeah, I know. You were right. Well, but they learned a lot. They still, they have the MVP and they have the Defensive Player of the Year. They literally can't go take those away, right? Like, there's no special rule in esports where they can go take it away and
not unless Reggie
right?
Bush this thing. So
okay, good. Well, they can't take that away from us. And you know what else they can't take back? Nobody's going to be able to get back this 50 minutes we've just spent talking about all this stuff. But you know what? If they stuck with us this long, you're our people.
It happens from time to time. People do stick around through the end of the podcast. It's incredible.
I
Shout
was
out to all you people.
Camping all weekend with a whole bunch of mountain bikers, and there was not a big crossover between Blazer fan and mountain bikers.
You almost said Laker fans. Good God, what's wrong with you?
I don't know what's wrong with me. It's late. But there was not a big crossover amongst mountain bikers and Blazer fans at this event that I was at this weekend. But the Blazer fans that I did talk to, they're a little worried. They're not feeling super hopeful about this season. So I did my usual thing where I'm like, I can't replace my optimism on you, but I can tell you what I'm looking forward to. So we've touched on a few things during this episode. We talked about Anfernee. We talked about, this being, maybe some things, maybe Seth will come out and do something. There's some things to look forward to in the future. We're doing our best. I don't know. Help me out here. Get me out of this endless loop.
You're going to me for optimism? Nah, couldn't be me.
No, I meant for just wrapping up this episode of the podcast. Fine. I'm not going to you for optimism.
All right. Well, that's smart. And
although you are actually much more optimism than you let on. You're much more optimistic than you let on.
Shh. Don't tell anybody.
The piece that you wrote about Zach Collins, if people haven't read it, they should go and read it, because it provides what we've had time to do on the podcast is to give a little bit of context to your Zach Collins takes, which sometimes I think on Twitter people think you're attacking Zach. And in the article that you wrote, you talked a little bit more about it within the the expectations and being reasonable and not throwing him out there. For people to be disappointed in something that he can't do, and you came up with some really reasonable things for him to improve on. So
yeah, it was definitely a fun article, right? And shout out to everybody who has commented or reached out to me about that article, because the reaction that I got from that was not at all what I expected. So kudos to everybody out there. I appreciate that.
What did you think people were gonna say?
Oh, I was waiting for the torches and pitchforks. I was just
because they thought that you were being mean to him.
I mean, that's kind of the reaction that I've got for most of a year, so I was kind of prepared for that. But with that in mind, cool stuff. Again, that's kind of the theme of what I'll be writing about heading into the season every weekend, and it's about expectations and growth and what to look forward to the season. And I think how things should be looked at going into the season. Like, what are the acceptable levels and bars and barometers for everything?
Like CJ and end game situations, for example.
Yeah, maybe that's a way that I go look at it. Just the Blazers in end game situations. Maybe that's something I'll do over the next couple of weeks. Those 5 point or less games. What do those swing games mean, and how do the Blazers need to attack those, and how do they need to do against the Eastern Conference? Those are all things I think that I'm going to be looking at over the next couple of weeks. So it'll be fun. It's something to keep my sanity between now and camp ramping up. So, but I think that's a good place to get out on. So, Tara, go ahead and let everybody know where they can find you.
You can find me on Twitter at TCBBiggs. You can also find my other podcast in the Blazers Edge podcast feed, Women's Hoops and Talk. Comes out every other Thursday, and you can follow Hoops and Talk at Hoops and Talk on Twitter. And as soon as we post an episode, we will post it on Twitter. So you can either get it in the feed, or you can follow us on Twitter and get it as soon as it comes out.
All right, thank you, Tara. As always, you can find me on Twitter at DMarang, at DMARANG, as well as Tuesdays and Thursday nights on NBC Sports Northwest with Joe Simons and Shane Brennan on Blazers Outsiders. We just wrapped up the Rip City Cornhole tournament we were talking about earlier. That was the kind of the cool thing that we had going. Hopefully, we have some more cool stuff coming down the road that I can share in the coming weeks. But until then, folks, like, rate, subscribe, review, do all that stuff. iTunes, Apple Podcasts, everywhere else for your podcast needs. Until next time, folks, take care.